Good morning. In today's webinar, attendees will learn the features of Oracle's narrative reporting and why this may be an easy first step into the cloud. Additionally, you'll learn which features are unique to the platform and understand when to use them. It is hosted by Geordan Drummond, Product Manager at Alithya. Now that Ranzel has become a part of Alithya, stay connected with us as we continue to offer more value-added services, including enterprise resource planning, enterprise performance management, e-business suite, and business analytics. Jordan? Jordan, you're muted.
Yep, thanks, Joey.
Okay.
All right, so thanks, Joey. So today, we're going to talk about narrative reporting. This is formerly the service called EPRCS, and we're going to kind of explore some of the different things that you can do with the product and learn what is possible with this business process. So, this is the agenda for today. We're going to go through some introductions. I'm going to go through kind of a product overview of the different components, and then we'll kind of drill into each one of those, the narrative reporting, management reporting, and disclosure management. And then we'll finish with just a little bit of Q&A. So just a little bit about myself briefly. I have a little over 20 years of Oracle/Hyperion experience. I've worked on the customer side at an insurance company as an enterprise and HFM administrator. I've worked on the vendor side as a consultant for Hyperion and Oracle, and then finally on the partner side at Alithya, doing basically consulting on all of the close-related products, consolidation, account recs, tax, and reporting products. And I'm one of the close and consolidation product managers within the product group. So we work a lot with Oracle product management and provide guidance on best practices to our delivery teams. Just a little bit about myself, just a tiny bit about the company as well. So Ranzel's been around for over 20 years. We joined forces with Alithya back in November of last year so that we can basically offer a full range of solutions around EPM, ERP, and analytics. Like I mentioned, we have over 20 years of implementations, over 1,000 clients, over 2,000 projects. We have 5 Oracle ACEs, a number of certified cloud resources, and again, we offer the full range of solutions. So that's kind of a general overview of the company itself. Now to kind of jump into the material. First of all, I'm going to touch on the product overview and kind of give you a sense of what the product's all about. So, like I mentioned, this is narrative reporting. This used to be called EPRCS. It's kind of renamed to narrative reporting because that's kind of the focus. So there are kind of 3 main components that are involved. There is the narrative reporting process, and basically this is workflow for documents and presentations. And you're basically going to be creating with this particular portion of the service, you're going to be creating something in Word, PowerPoint, or PDF. That's going to be your ultimate output. Although you're going to have various other pieces that flow into that. In addition to that, there's a component called management reporting. This is a report writer that works across multiple services. So if you want to connect to planning or consolidation or tax, you can connect to that from the same report writer. And ultimately, this is going to be the component that will replace financial reporting, FR, that is currently in the other cloud business processes. And then last but not least, there is the disclosure management component, and this allows you to generate your filings either in XBRL or other formats. So just a little bit of an overview on the solution architecture, because like I mentioned, there are a number of different components. This kind of shows how it all comes together. So kind of in the middle, you have the box for narrative reporting. You kind of basically have your workflow. You have the management reporting report writer. And then in order to get the data in for your reports, basically you can source that either from on-prem or from a cloud EPM service. That will feed basically through SmartView, as you can see from the diagram, and then that will basically go into the report package. So you can source your data either from on-prem or from the cloud. Now, as you'll notice, there's no data management in here because there's no effectively there's no place where you're basically putting that data. You're pulling it from the other solutions that are out there that have data that you want to pull from. In addition to that, at the top of the diagram, you'll see there that there's Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and PDF. So if you're going to be creating a report package that's Word or PowerPoint based or PDF based, you can source all of that information, including Excel files that are even not Smart View enabled. Even if you have additional tables, you can basically bring those into the package as well. And then at the end of the day, after you've pulled all that information together from the various sources, you're going to generate a compiled report or presentation like you can see on the right. That could be, again, Word, PowerPoint, or PDF. And then the other option would be, of course, if you're going the disclosure management route, you can generate your regulatory submission in XBRL or the other filing formats that you need to provide your filings in. So just a little bit about the basic navigation of what you see on the web. It looks very similar to the other business processes within the EPM suite. You see on the left-hand side, you have all of your tasks that need to be completed, any messages that are waiting for you that you need to take action on. And then, of course, you have your cards that are various components of the product. So you have tasks that you might need to complete. You might have messages that you need to follow up on. And the messages are also a place where you might get updates if you imported a report package or reports. So it's kind of like it's kind of like the jobs console that you might see in the other services. There is your listing of report packages. Your reports are basically where you get to the management reporting component. You have notes, which I'll drill into a little bit more, but you use that within the management reporting tool itself to create some additional content and make some additional notes about the data that you're reporting on. Disclosure management is, of course, the XBRL or the regulatory reporting piece. Your library is where you're going to find all your documents and all your data sources. And then you have some other items here that are related to basically maintenance and administrative items, your maintenance, access control, appearance, etc. So in addition to what you see on the web, you can also get to a lot of this content via SmartView, and it's one of the best ways to interact with this particular business process. So first of all, on the narrative reporting side, there is a ribbon, and there is an extension for that. It works in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So you can kind of see a few of the screenshots there. On the right, you can see kind of the high level kind of dashboard of where you have what tasks need to be completed, any active report packages, recent items, etc. You can also look at the library view that you see over there on the right that has all the different folders that you may have set up. And then all of your reports, whether they're coming from management reporting or from a disclosure standpoint. And then you'll also see kind of the ribbon there for narrative reporting. In the middle, you'll see all the items that you need to do from a workflow perspective. Do your check-in, check-out, upload, submit, approve, reject, refresh, sync, etc. So in addition to that set of functionality that's within the core narrative reporting extension, there are also two other extensions. One is for disclosure management, which works against Word and Excel, and then also a high volume XBRL one that works for Excel only. And so you can see an example of that kind of at the bottom for the disclosure management ribbon and all of the features that you have there. And I'll go through those in a little bit more detail further in the presentation. So where do you get these extensions? Basically, you can get them from two different ways. You can either get them from the web. So if you go to where your name is in the service, go to downloads, just like you would get for the planning admin extension. You can basically pull it down from the web. You'll see all of the items that are available for download. You have like I mentioned, the core narrative reporting extension, disclosure management, and the auto tagging. And you can also get them from within SmartView itself. If you go through options and you go to extensions, you can go and you can download them, and you'll get a dialog box like you see on the left. So it'll tell you if you need to get any updates or not, or if you're current. So that's kind of a general overview of the product and kind of how you interact with it. So I'll just jump into one of the core pieces here, narrative reporting. So as I mentioned, the narrative reporting process, this is basically a way to create report packages for Word, PowerPoint, and PDF documents. Those are basically your final output. So what you're doing with this what you're doing with this particular component of the service is you are taking a document that has a number of different pieces to it, and you're combining all those pieces together, wrapping workflow around each one of them, and then at the end of the day, generating a final product that's composed of all those constituent pieces. So with this, like we saw, there are SmartView extensions, there is the web piece. These work hand in hand so that the status that you see in the web is going to be the same in SmartView. And you can basically hand off seamlessly between them. And like we saw in the diagram, data can be pulled from SmartView, management reports, or embedded Excel files that actually have no connectivity to EPM whatsoever. And then there's also a distribution process for report packages to send to end users. So just a little bit of terminology here. I mentioned a few phrases, but I'm going to try and define them here. So if you see some videos or get some documentation on the product, you kind of understand exactly what these mean. So first of all, there's the concept of report package. So this is a narrative report that's based on a Word, PowerPoint, or PDF sources. And this is the collection of all those individual pieces that come together to produce a final document or a final PowerPoint deck. Those individual pieces are called DOCLETS. So these are individual portions of the report package that you want to assign responsibility for. So you might have somebody responsible for authoring that content, and somebody responsible for approving it, and then eventually signing off on it. A reference doclet is another form of a doclet that is used in a reporting package that is basically typically a table that you would use within the report package. It could be an Excel table, whether it's SmartView or just a plain Excel table that has just a self-contained Excel file, or it could also be an MR report, management reporting report from the report writer that you're going to display in the report package. A supplemental doclet is a supporting doclet that you might want to include into the reporting package for reference purposes, but it's not actually going to display within the report package itself. So it's there just for additional information for whoever needs to have additional context around the report package, but they're not necessarily going to use it. There's also the concept of a section. So this is basically a grouping of doclets. It could be, let's say, your MD&A, footnotes, etc. But it's a way to group your doclets it's not actually going to show up within the final output, but it's just a way of organizing your material so that you can navigate through it more easily. And then there are variables. This is basically a placeholder for data values that can be substituted. So you might have a particular data value that you want to refresh. You can link that to dynamically pull in a value from one of your source systems. And by referencing that variable, the value can always be kept up to date. So it's similar to what you would do in some programming languages. And then finally, there's the concept of check-in and check-out. This just allows you to have control over which particular doclet is in use by a particular user at a particular point in time. So that's some basic terminology. So if you want to go create a new report package, there are a couple ways of doing it. The first way is doing it on the web. And when you go to create this, there's kind of a wizard, kind of a series of prompts where you follow kind of a wizard type process where you first enter in some properties. So you enter in the name, the description, what's your report type, is it Word, PowerPoint, PDF? You provide a style sample for fonts and the rest of the layout of the file. And then after that, you're going to have to enter in some additional properties. After that, you're going to define the process. So this is basically your phases that you want to have for the reporting package. There's an author phase, review phase, and sign off. You don't necessarily have to use those. So you can choose which one of those you actually want to use for your package. And in addition to that, then you actually have to define some dates for when each of these phases begin and end. After that, you assign users, and then you can define any additional options. On the SmartView side, there is also a process, and this is not exactly the same as what you get on the web, but it has a few additional features that are extremely helpful. So when you create this within SmartView, as you can see in the screenshots, you go to the report package listing, you do a new report package, or you can click on it from kind of the quick action menu that pops up in the in the panel on the side. And then what this allows you to do within Word, this is Word only from within the SmartView extension. You can't, not available in PowerPoint or Excel. But when you do this in Word, what this will allow you to do is auto-create the doclets that you need for your report package. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. Either you can point to a folder of documents. So let's say you have 15 different Word files that you want to combine into your master document. You can point it to that particular folder, or you can point to an individual Word or PDF file, and it will actually parse the document, look for the sections, and then break those out into individual pieces. So that's kind of what you see there in the diagram. The top two kind of radio buttons indicate whether or not you're going to be choosing an individual file as your source or a folder with all the files. When you've finished that, you click on Generate Doclets, and then it will start to run the process. And this will take a little bit of time to process because it does have to run through all the folders and also all of the entire file if it has to parse it. So once you finish that and you click on Generate, it's going to show you all of the components that it's generated. So you can kind of see that on the right-hand side. You have in this case, there are 8 different doclets that were created from Word. And then for each one of those, you can choose, are these regular doclets? Are they reference doclets? Are they supplemental? Or are they just part of a section break that you need to use? So once you've defined all of that, you've entered in any descriptions that you want, you click on Import, and then it shows up on the web, and you'll see that they're on the bottom left screenshot. So then you can go back to that report package that's generated in Word, and then you can set that up further in the web to do all of your workflow configuration and assign your authors, your reviewers, etc. So this is basically where you would do that. We kind of saw a screenshot of this before, but you can see across the top, you have your author review sign-off phase, and you have your author column and responsibility where you can basically assign your ownership. So you can move things around. Once you've got all those, once you have all those doclets created, you can create additional sections, you can move things around, and assign the ownership as needed. So just to drill in a little bit more, we talked about the definition of the doclets, but I'm going to show a little bit more on those. So there's the standard doclets that you can use. These can be Word, PowerPoint, Excel, or PDF files. You can add them from SmartView or the web UI. The top two screenshots are from the web. The bottom are from the SmartView user interface from the ribbon. You can also create them from scratch within SmartView. So you can actually take a Word file, start typing, and then you can basically upload it. You'll see that on the ribbon over on the right-hand side. And then you can give it a name, and it'll create that doclet, and then you can check it in. Reference doclets, there are obviously a couple of options for that. One that I mentioned was creating the MR reports from the report writer. So if you want to include one of the reports that you've previously created from within management reporting, you can reference those within your report package. And basically where you would do that is there within the report center, you go to Add Doclet, you choose your reference doclet, and then instead of choosing Excel, you choose Report. And by doing that, it's going to basically allow you to choose the correct report. As you can see there, you can highlight it in the middle screenshot from the report listing. And then it's going to ask you for the POV, which you can hard code, or you can use a variable to make it a little bit more dynamic. So if you were to do this, if you wanted to create a reference document, but on the Excel side, you basically follow the same process, but in the dropdown, you're just going to choose Excel instead. And then it's going to ask for a name. And basically, the way this works is it's going to use a range that you defined within the file. So if you have an Excel file that you want to include as a reference document, the most important thing is to go and define your range up front, and then that way you can reference it when you want to bring it in as a document. So you can use this, you can do this as SmartView, or as I mentioned, even just a plain Excel file. If you just have a small table that there's no reason to include anywhere in your EPM applications, you can just basically keep that, and it's going to live and reside within this report package, and you can update it from there. You can open it up, make your updates, and then check it back in. On the SmartView side, this can either be an ad hoc based file, or it can be a function based file. And then if you want to do this from when you go to do it within SmartView itself, within the Word document, you can use the embed feature, and then that will basically embed that doclet or file that, that you've selected into the report package. So supplemental doclets, I touched on that briefly, but these are situations where you do want to include additional information. You don't want to actually have it display within the body of the report package, but you do want to have it available for reference for other authors or people who interact with the report package. And you can basically do this from the report center, assign any users that you need, and then users can go click on, as you see in the bottom screenshot, act on content and download that file. So variables, I mentioned this briefly. This is just a way to basically make the report a little bit more dynamic. You can create these variables and they can be used throughout the entire reporting package. And there's two types. One is a static variable. So this is used for items like constants, like the current reporting period. So if you have, for the period ended June 30th, 2019, you can basically make that your variable. And then anytime you have that on the page, you can reference that and then it will update. So if you roll the report package over the next month, you update that, or to the next quarter, you can update that variable to say for the period ending September 30th, 2019, and it will update that automatically in the report. So very useful. Reference variables, these are for values that are going to update automatically on a kind of a dynamic basis. So you might assign the variable, we'll see how to do that in a minute, but basically you're going to assign a value that you're pulling in, and then anywhere where you use that variable, if it's in verbiage or somewhere else, you can basically get the most recent value for that. It also does show the usage count, so if you want to see where all that variable is used, as you can kind of see there in the top screenshot. Each one of those, the current month has basically a count, and it shows you which doclets are using that variable. And you can also see it there in SmartView as well. You can see your list of variables and basically where they're being used. So in order to insert your variables in Word, basically you open and check out the doclet. You place your pointer where the variable needs to go. In this case, we're going to do the month ending June 30th. You click on the arrow next to the variable to insert it, and then you so you press that. You press the arrow. It's going to insert the value, and then you get this little control on the variable. As you can see in the screenshot at the top, you get the kind of tab with 3 dots, the little gray tab, and that indicates that that's a variable and that it's a kind of in a read-only mode. You can also see where all you have variables referenced in the doclet by using the highlight feature. So you can kind of see that in the lower screenshot. You click on the drop-down and you go to highlight. And then you can see in the upper screenshot, it shows up that the net income value of 3 million is highlighted in yellow. So it's very useful to see where all you're using a variable on the page, just to locate it quickly. You can also use these variables to create conditional text, which is another very useful use case for them. So one thing that was made available recently in the 1907 release was a server-side refresh. This basically allows reference doclets and files to be refreshed all at once or individually. You can choose individual data sources to refresh, or you can do all of them at once. And kind of a common thing is to use the variables that we just saw to have common POV elements, since that's what you're going to need in the doclet. And then finally, on the narrative reporting side, distributions, you can set up distribution lists for recipients, either users or groups. You can set the rollover count, and you can allow for downloads or just viewing directly in the browser. So you have some options around that. So some just use cases for narrative reporting. There's, on the Word side, management reports that you do on the monthly or quarterly basis, regulatory filings. Even we've seen it, some use cases for procurement purposes to kind of track the internal procurement process. PowerPoint, budget books, and board books on the PDF side, annual reports and investor reporting. So basically, think of using this as for any report, a repetitive reporting process, whether it's operational or financial. You don't have to necessarily think of using this just for your financial reports. You can use this for something that's on the operational side as well. So I'm going to switch our gears now over to management reporting, one of the other components of the product. So like I mentioned, this is basically a report writer that's equivalent to FR. It has a number of improvements that I'm going to kind of touch on. So basically, you can use any of the Oracle Cloud sources, and then also OAC and Fusion ERP Cloud. And then on the on-prem side, it does connect to Essbase as well. So some of the main features, you have data grids, charts, text boxes, images, and notes, headers, footers, and then the properties panel. That's kind of the main navigation. So it's fairly similar to the FR report writer, if you're familiar with that. Although it's been totally redesigned and it's a much better UI, I would say, than FR. So some of the features on the grid side, you have suppression, formatting, conditional formatting, things you'd expect out of a report writer. The nice thing about management reporting is it does add some additional options for zooming, which are equivalent to expansions in FR. So you can zoom not just to the next level, but you can zoom to children, bottom, or descendants. You can see that in the screenshot on the right. So that's very useful. You can also change the ancestor position to have it at the top or bottom. In addition to that, there is row banding available, which is a nice way to kind of format your reports, just like you would do in Excel, and you can choose the color. And then there's also some sorting options for that. On the charting side, there are a lot more options available than in FR. You can either use an existing grid or you can create a new data set. And then if you look at the number of different formats here, there's 20 different formats that you can do, including waterfall type charts, which a lot of people have been interested in recently. So a lot wider range of charting than currently in financial reporting. There's also a new feature that came out within the last couple of releases called Notes. And what this allows users to do is actually input their text to add commentary to report in a box on the report itself. So instead of having to fill that out in the form, they can actually do it in the report itself. So this is similar to annotations in FR, but I'd say it's a little bit more flexible. It's kind of like an interactive comment box in Excel where you have a text box that you kind of draw on the page. You can define the POV for it, or you can leave it dynamic. There's also a centralized listing of notes that are accessible from the notes card from the main screen. And then you can configure access for each of those note objects. So you can kind of see that there in the screenshots on the left in the bottom. So just a couple comparisons to FR Studio. The features are pretty much a parity. I'd say that the menus and features have been redesigned. I think they're a lot cleaner, like I mentioned. It's a much cleaner UI, much easier to access. There are a much wider range of charting options. And what's nice about this is that you don't necessarily have to open up another window like you do with FR Web Studio. All the editing happens within the same windows. It's kind of a seamless process between editing and viewing your reports. And then within the next little bit, Oracle will be adding books and batches and bursting to the product. So stay tuned to the release notes for that. There's also the ability to convert your existing FR reports to MR if you do want to take advantage of this feature. So you can export your reports either in a zip file or as just a DES. You go and you go into the library, determine where you want those to reside. You import the zip or the DES file, and then the results will show up in the messages. So like I mentioned, that's kind of like going to your jobs, either in the planning or the consolidation or tax processes. So use cases, like I mentioned, this is ultimately going to replace FR. You can use it for production reporting, either against a single source or multiple sources. You can embed items within the report package from the MR report. This becomes a reference doclet, so you can use that with Word, PowerPoint, and PDF. And you can also leverage the cross-pod linking to basically create access to individual reports from your other services. So you can link to these reports from either planning or consolidation or tax. So with just a little bit of time left, I'm going to quickly touch on disclosure management. This is similar to narrative reporting. You can use either on-prem or you can use cloud sources for this to do your filing formats. This is primarily done through the SmartView extensions, but there's a little bit done through the web. The web is basically used for a few different features. You're basically creating new packages, inspecting the properties, deleting or renaming items. You can also you can also inspect the features to assign users, as well as track the history of what has happened with the package. So the process is basically you create the docklets, you import your taxonomies, you map to that taxonomy, you validate against the document type, and then finally you publish your instance document that you'd use to submit. So there's support for SEC, IFRS, and IXBRL. So kind of the components that you'd see on the ribbon, you have Explorer to look at all of the different report components. You have Taxonomy Manager to import and choose your taxonomies, auto tagging to automatically tag your elements. There's a mapping tool to manually map out the data points. You can validate your submission to confirm that the file is compliant with the taxonomy, and then finally you can publish using the instance document. So there is a taxonomy manager. This allows you to either add new taxonomies, edit or delete them, and then use the mapping tool to actually select the taxonomy. You can only use one at once. And then within the Explorer, this allows you basically to manage all of your docklets. And you can kind of see that in the screenshot at the top. You've got all your Word and Excel docklets that are used as part of the submission. And then you can refresh those. You can view or remove permissions. You can look at the versions and use commentary to track them. And then you can update any of those docklets within the master. So in order to add your docklets, you start in the report manager, do Word or Excel, select the worksheet that you want to use. They can be either ad hoc or function-based. And then once you do this, you basically imported that file into the docklet, and it's no longer linked to wherever you pulled it from, if it's a file share or somewhere else on the network. So when you actually go to do the mapping process, you're mapping three things, basically the concept, which is the item, like financial statement line item, the context, which is the time period, and the unit, which is the currency used, the ISO code. So you can kind of see that over on the right. You've got those tabs in the panel on at the top. You have your concept, context, unit. You can also set up and associate any variables that you might need to make it dynamic to refresh the values. Basically the way you perform the mapping is you highlight the value that you want to map, you click on the concept, and then you click on the button that says attach mapping. Once you've done that for all of your values, you go to the review tab, it'll show all the mapped values. And then for Word docs, you can also assign tagging for each level. So it might be the paragraph, it might be the section, it might be all of your MD&A or your footnotes, or it might be a particular table. So you can do all the mapping for that. You can also run the auto tag process to get a first pass of that, and then you can fine tune that as needed. So after that, you want to go and validate. It's always a good idea to validate your individual docklets first. You open up the Word master document after you've completed that, and then you can validate against the formats you need, your XBRL, IXBRL, or SEC. And then you make any adjustments based on any errors that pop up, like you can see on the right-hand side. So then finally, you can publish and preview. Once the validation is complete, you publish the file. And again, you can use any of the document types. In addition to that, you can also do it as a PDF or Word file. And then ultimately, you can preview that file using the viewer. So just some implementation considerations to wrap up. How many, you should ask, just kind of think about how many reports you need and what the audiences are for those reports, for the reporting packages. You might want to think about how many reporting users you might have in total for this service. You might need to think about who the owners are of the reports and who is going to administer them, because they're going to need to shepherd them through the authoring and the approval process. You might need to think about where the data is coming from. Is it coming from planning? Is it coming from consolidation, tax, or something else entirely? You might need to think about adding additional dimensionality to your existing EPM products. Let's say additional statistical accounts or memo accounts, either in consolidation or planning, just to seed that data so that it's accessible from the reporting package. And then finally, as part of the project preparation, it would be useful to perform a lower level analysis of each report and determine how you want to break up that document into individual docklets, so that you at least have some sense of how you want to break that up before you kind of jump into the tool. So with that, that's kind of the material, and I'll turn it back over to Joey for any questions.
Thanks, Jordan. At this time, anyone can feel free to submit questions related to today's webinar topic. Alternatively, you can email your questions to infosolutions@alithya.com, and we'll provide a response. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website shortly, where you may also find a number of previous webinars posted. We hope you gained insight from today's webinar. Please visit our website to learn about and register for upcoming webinars, and follow us on social media to get alerts about upcoming events, training, and webinars. Join us on Wednesday, August 14th at 3 p.m. for a webinar to highlight the key features and concepts of Enterprise Data Management Cloud Service. The host will also dive into a recent project involving an EDMCS implementation for an enterprise cost management allocation initiative. Challenges, lessons learned, and benefits achieved will be highlighted, along with a look at the unique mix of products and technologies involved in the solution, including PCMCS, Linux, and EPM Automate. And attendees will hear about the interesting challenges involving dimensionality, primary and alternate hierarchies, and data mappings as they relate to an EDMCS implementation for PCMCS. Visit the events page on our website to register for this and other upcoming webinars. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and thanks to Jordan for sharing your knowledge and expertise during this presentation. And this concludes today's webinar.